I am the original man. I am a son of Africa. Peace to the listening audience out there.
And my sister, the ingenuous and lovely Dr. Kimberly Muktarian.
Well, peace to everyone. Thank you for having me on once again. And I know that this is going to be one delightful and inviting show for all.
I'm not gonna rave too long, but I do want to state lynching in the United States has taken various forms, and each reflecting the racial tensions and social dynamics of the time. And here are some different forms of lynching that's been documented. Hanging is the most common form. Burning, where victims were often burned alive by a mob or the law. Torture, decapitation, and this was often used to display the power and or as a form of punishment and desecration. And these forms of lynching were often public spectacles intended to spread fear and maintain white supremacy. The practice was a response to the rise of African Americans in the South and the economic and political power they were gaining. Now, Dr. Kim, let's begin with 5 stages of lynching, and can you explain this to us?
Absolutely. Well, let me just say this as one who I just want to at least take us back just a little bit, if you don't mind, before we talk about the 5 stages, because most of the time, like you said, Brother Essence, most people are looking at lynchings to be one that has a body hanging from the tree, predominantly African American, predominantly a black male. But this has nothing to do with who is hanging as much as it is who the hangers are.
Right. Yes.
America was founded off of terrorism, and lynching is a form of terror. So when we talk about the 5 stages, we have to go back and address who it is and what it is that we are actually addressing. Because most people will think, okay, well, we're in a country and a country should have citizens. I go back to this all the time. Well, you don't lynch citizens. And if you recall, our lynchings really began primarily, they became heightened immediately after emancipation.
Right.
So before you go from one era where you could beat your slave, your quote unquote property, an inch near death. But immediately after slavery, Brother Asar, this body has no value. So now not only can you kill him, you can torture him. You can set him on fire. And that is the rage that you see happening from you're my equal. It is white inferiority, and I won't say white supremacy because you shouldn't have to do that to be supreme. You shouldn't have to torture another human in order to be supreme. So what you see is the amount of anger. A lynching is the amount of anger, because mind you, the body can only suffocate from a asphyxiation for a couple of minutes to a second. It's the terrorism. It's the feeling of pride and superiority that is more important, just as important as the hanging itself. So we're talking to people who are obsessed with having power and control. And lynchings are set around how much power and control can I actually absorb and get away with it. Now, if you notice, most lynchings, when they happen, they're in public venues, public spaces, hangings at the courthouse, in front of the courthouse, hanging in, they're not hiding it. Why? Because they're telling you that we set up a system where we have 100% complete immunity.
Right.
Let's not talk about the body. Let's talk about who sets up a system that gives themselves permission to torture, kill, maim, dismember. And then we wonder why all of the movies, the horror movies, are produced by the
Yeah,
same
same type of mind. Yeah.
right? It's a whole culture. It goes into their entertainment. It goes into their legalities. It goes wherever they go because it's a culture, not an occurrence. Lynchings are not an occurrence. We are dealing with an entire culture.
Yes.
And that is the sick format of what lynchings are. We don't need a body yet. We're still dealing with mindset.
Right.
And so if we did go a little further and cross the street into mindset, it would first be you have to have an enemy. You have to have someone to feel that you may feel inferior to you. And that just so happens to be targeting. The first step phase for lynching is targeting. How many, we all know that most of our targets happen during today, if we say modern day lynching, we're talking about traffic stops.
Yes.
But before, when they shot and killed us, and mind you, I'm going to roll you back because not only are we talking about a lynching being open and public, it's also saying that we have an entire government that backs our behaviors. And they are expected to be covered from any punishment or any prosecution. That is why they gladly take a picture. They take selfies after they murder.
Right.
They take selfies. These are people who they don't have to cover their faces in shame. They bring their children. They're not afraid of their children telling on them. You know how we try to tell the children, don't say what went on in the house.
Right.
No, they know that everybody white is immune from punishment. And even though someone knows exactly who these people are in these photos, have you noticed no one would dare write in the names of anybody they recognize in those lynching photos? Like a yearbook. And you have a yearbook, you write who you know. That's,
Yeah. Right.
But these postcards go all over the nation, all everywhere, and nobody's ever written a name to say, that's my old uncle. That's Mr. who lived down the street from us. So, again, we're still talking about a pattern of not just cover up. They don't have to cover up.
They don't have to. You said something very imperative a little bit ago. You said first they was beaten during the slavery time. I'm assuming they was beating them to a pulp.
Yes.
But once they emancipate them, now they go to murder.
Murder.
Yeah.
Straight to murder.
Right.
Because now you don't have no value.
Right. No more value.
You have no value. You zero value. And so we're dispensable. Now, remember, they would chase us to the top of Canada. Matter of fact, they passed the Fugitive Slave Law Act that says that if your slave escaped to a state known for freedom, like every state didn't have slavery.
Right.
If your slave escaped, you had to turn that slave back over. And if I came to your state to get my slave, you had to turn it over. If not, we prosecute you too.
And these in the free states.
These are in the free states.
Yeah.
So you didn't even have immunity in your own free state to keep this person. That is one of the issues with Dred Scott, the Dred Scott case, and so many other cases. So again, look at how quickly we're now talking about value and economics when it comes to lynching. Because as soon as my value is equal to yours, it immediately says I can destroy you because you can't be my equal.
Understood.
Absolutely. And so lynching is a way to keep us in our place. Lynchings were designed to keep black people terrified and in our place.
Understood.
Yes.
Understood.
So then there's your targeting.
Right.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Kim.
Please.
Right. Okay, you say that lynching was used to terrify us, right?
Yes.
And even in modern day lynching, right? Now, in your estimate, how effective, from their point of view, I'm talking about the ones who do the lynching,
Yes.
how effective have they been in psychologically affecting African Americans in our daily lives?
Well, I'll split that question, Brother Asar, because I believe they've been 100% effective in the point of getting away with murder. Why? Because now they've placed it not under lynching. The modern day lynching is no longer called lynching. It's poor training.
Right. Indeed.
So anytime they
Yeah.
lynch us now, they just say we need to go back and get better training. But if you notice, the still protections are in place. The same protections in the 30s that allowed them to kill us is the same protections that they have today. What do they call it today? Qualified immunity.
Right. Indeed.
So qualified immunity is a term that's given to not only police officers and law enforcement, but also judges, where whatever you do, it cannot be used against you, and we cannot punish you. Case in point, Darrell Williams, who was killed on Rock Choir Road by 5 white officers. You could sue them all day, but you couldn't. You basically couldn't bring any kind of charges, criminal charges against them. So
Nope.
and so we pay for that as taxpayers. You can sue them all day because we have insurance. But they're going to keep their murderers. They're going to keep their lynch mob.
Right.
And what they've done, what they've been able to do, so that we don't detect that it is still a lynching, is they've sophisticated their lynching.
So
Before, you look at the picture, is regular white men, women, and children. Today, they've clothed themselves in uniform.
Right.
yes.
So now they blur the lines as to how we even determine who the lynching is coming from. But mind you, in the city of Raleigh, every lynching has happened by white officers, with the exception of Ivan Ingram from the 80s, or somewhere along in there, much earlier than 2000. That was the only lynching that we know, or murder by police officers, that happened by a black officer. Other than that, all of these lynchings are at the hands of white officers. Something is wrong with that picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
so,
and most of all of the incidents are black men.
and I was just seeing the other day where they just gave, I think, a brother with 15, 17 years or something for protecting himself from a police officer. So he got like an assault on a police officer. He get years. And of course they got what you call it, qualified immunity.
Yes, qualified immunity.
Immunity. Yeah. So many of those tactics was often used for land grabs also. First, land grabs describes the use of racial violence and terrorism to force black people off their property so white people could seize the assets. This practice was a key economic motive behind many lynchings in the post-Reconstruction South. So, quick fact, in 2001, the Associated Press investigation found a widespread pattern of land taken from blacks through intimidation, violence, and murders. Like the 1919 Elaine massacre in Arkansas, where 200 black farmers were killed. The lynching of Reverend Isaac Simmons in Mississippi in 1944 was murdered, and his oil-rich land was stolen also. Would you like to add on to any other such land grabs, or anything you know about their land grabs, that type of tactic they use?
Absolutely, Brother Essence. That is probably one of the most ignored tactics of lynching, because once the body is laid to rest, we move on, and their just due has been done. But what most people don't see, and I'll give you a prime example, is 1898, the Wilmington riot, when white supremacists or white inferiority individuals came together to lynch brother named Manley who had his own newspaper press. He had his own thing going immediately after slavery. And what was ironic is that they were very mad at the blacks in Wilmington because we probably, they said immediately after, we were leading in education, we were building fast, you know, we jumped out of slavery and we hit the ground running. And he had a nerve to use the freedom of press, which has always been our downfall. Now, I won't say downfall, but our rising up, because we learned how to use the circuit to talk about our issues. And, you know, they started circulating this common lie that black men wanted white women. And that was usually the common practice or the prerequisite of a lynching, is to say that black men, we have to protect our white women from black men. And believe it or not, who actually helped spread this rumor, because I believe it was a white female out of Georgia who said, please protect us, you know, the damsel, the white damsel in distress. And he responded in his column that, no, you really don't have a problem with black males raping women. I believe it's more consensual. Oh, what did he say that for? When he responded in his column like an op-ed that says, basically, we don't want them. If anything, it's mutual.
Right.
The bugs and the flies came out. And they came and they burnt his entire press down.
Wow.
He sort of knew it, so he left before it was done. He was able to escape. However, who circulated what he said or brought fuel to the fire is none other than who you all know as Daniels, from the original owner of the News and Observer.
Right.
Okay.
So his stretch and influence was from the East Coast all the way to the other end. And he basically helps fuel the hate that got Wilmington burnt down. And, you know, they've made their, as I would say, amends verbally. However, you know, that's the truth of our history. Long story short, when they pushed everybody out of Wilmington that was black by terror, what they did is they came back and said that the black people abandoned their property.
So they just took it.
And so they partnered with the banks to just sell it off for pennies on the dollar. So there you are with this massive land grab. And if you go back, you know, some of the researchers that I have spoken with have looked and found that their names are no longer even on the deed as ever owning. So even if we wanted to go back and rectify it, you don't even have names of those who actually, you have the names who purchased it as of, but anything before is deleted.
So deleted.
So
I guess that explains that.
Right. So then, and so that is why it is important when we talk about lynching. We're not just talking about a body. We're talking about an entire system.
Right.
Who is co-conspirators, RICO artists.
Right.
That, you know, and then, you know, that's why it bothers. I'm very concerned when we use words like system.
Right.
No, this is a mob, a cult. This is not a system.
Right.
And if we're a part of that system, why would we be a part
Right, indeed.
of a system that would do us in that manner?
Right.
They've even sophisticated the language that goes along with the crime. So you don't even look at it as a crime.
Yeah.
How can you prosecute a crime that you never call a crime?
Right.
So.
Am I making sense, brother?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're making a lot of sense.
Right.
Please.
Yes.
And that remind me, stage 1 was targeting.
Yes.
And then stage 2 was
accusations.
accusations.
So, of course, in anything, most of it comes with an accusation. And then in most cases, the third is separation. Separation and or isolation. So, you know, the old time lynchings, they would isolate you that no one can get to you if you were lynched. But look at all of our lynchings today. When the police put their knee on George Floyd's neck,
yes.
you could not approach. You couldn't push him off. So they isolate their prey. This is not police work. This is predatory work.
Yeah.
This is not police uniform work. This is how they have made it so that they can isolate their victim, so that you cannot approach. I mean, come on. A body could be dangling. It could be your child, but you
Right.
are not allowed to approach
Yeah.
that body dangling. And they made sure they put that fear,
Yeah.
retaliation. So here you have qualified immunity. You have retaliation, targeting, isolation, separation. How would you call that a system? That's their system of operation, but it should never be called our system of operation.
Right.
And then the actual lynching, which is usually physical. But mind you, these things are already put in place long before we get to the physical body. And nobody's trying to stop it. The last but not least is the decapitation,
Yeah.
the maiming,
Yes.
the break. You know, in the older settings of lynching, they would cut off the fingers. They would burn the person alive. They would the person was already dead or deceased. But then there's an extra layer of hate that they send out, a message that says, we're not just going to let him die and be dead. Now we're going to humiliate, castrate. We're going to cut off parts and put it as souvenirs. People would put it in their windows at their local shops, the body parts. We're talking about sick.
Yeah, we talking sound like sociopaths for sure.
Sociopaths. So this is Saturday, but on Sunday, they're at somebody's local church. And on Monday, they're back at work. Look at what we are having to... What in the world happened in the caves of the Caucasus Mountain is what we have to ask. What did they get depleted of? What are they deficient of? Because somewhere along the way, humanity must have been leaked out of their
souls. Yeah.
of their soul.
Yeah.
And nobody has taken the time or efforts to address, because we're so traumatized by the lynching that we don't study the lyncher.
Right. If I may, because I think that's really important when you're talking about studying the lyncher. But also I think that, you know, one of our keys in order to counter and combat lynching is the knowledge of self, right? Because that strengthens our consciousness, right? And how to deal with, you know, such a enemy as those who have lynched us, right? The fear tactic is one where they've been very successful, right? But in order to challenge fear, you have to challenge that with courage.
Yes.
Right? And you challenge it with courage by understanding, you know, who we are as far as the original people, that we're the lion people, right? And that's why it's so important for us, you know, to study and research and go back thousands and thousands of years and understand the great warriors that we've had as a people, right? Because when we're talking about lynching, the counter to lynching is resistance, right? And we've always resisted. We got to continue to resist. But we can only resist on a high level when we raise our level of consciousness and awareness, right? So when we really, like you say, study the enemy, you have to study the enemy. You know, like Sun Tzu said, know thyself, know thy enemy, and know the terrain, know the environment. Yes. So those are the things that we have to know. That's why, you know, we basically had these type of, you know, shows, podcasts,
Yes.
to discuss the issues, right? So that we can get the proper information to our brothers and sisters to start researching and studying so we can prevent these lynchings that take place in our communities, whether it's in the courtroom, you know, whether it's at school, whether it's in the healthcare system, right? Whether it's basically, you know, putting these, you know, eugenics in our community where they, you don't want to kill the baby before the baby is even born. So we really have to raise our consciousness and understand who we're dealing with. And we cannot deny who the enemy is.
That's
We
right.
cannot deny that they are spiritless. That's why they try to, kill our spirit and kill our mind.
Yeah, and we got to understand how urgent it is to start on to get to recognize these problems and to start finding solutions for them. For one, the urgency is so big because of what's happening. She just mentioned down in Wilmington, how they burnt the city down there in Wilmington,
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then right around Rock Quarry Road. You just mentioned also.
Yes.
One incident that happened, and we had an incident. Brother came from the Chicago area, where he was found with his neck broke or something, noose around his neck under a tree, and they claimed that to be a suicide. I think the brother's name was Javion Mitchell, and it was in Henderson, North Carolina. Javion McGee.
Yes.
That's exactly right. So, you familiar with that incident?
I am, and I actually reached out to a family member's representative, and they said they were, dealing with it, from their aspect. And I left myself available if need be. I never heard anything, but according to another brother advocate, Richard Taylor, he said that it was indeed found a lynching. Now, why we didn't stump the yard, I don't know. But again, and sometimes, and that's the other issue, is that because it is so systematic, because it's so embedded in the fabric of who they are, it wears us down to have to follow every lynching.
Right.
So George Floyd has been gone for 5 years. We still don't have the George Floyd Act. Do you see anybody fighting to get it?
No.
No. You know why? Because we have to survive for right now. And that's the thing that happens, is that they keep us in survival mode. So we never do get a chance to live, which also means that we're not citizens.
Right.
Because citizens are given permission to live.
Right.
If we're always looking over our shoulder and we can't move forward, and we're living right now, it's almost like we'll be deported. We're living in a person who would be instantly deported. We never know when the hammer is going to fall. And so that is what a lynching is. It is to keep us from a level of anxiety and fear,
Right.
even from the unknown. An unknown that they will never have to be concerned about, because we don't lynch them.
Right. Yeah.
They never have to look over their shoulder, which means they've created a system that says they're very comfortable in what they've created. It's been very well crafted, and what we have to stop doing is saying it is the system. It is not the system. It is white supremacy.
Yeah.
It's fear tactics, and in order for us to get a check, we have to join the game.
So, you want to say something, brother?
Well, I just think that, when we understand, what this country's foundation is, right? In the beginning, right? And I always like to go to the Constitution, right? We were never considered to be human beings, right? Even when they say we were 3/5 of a man, and we know that all that was nothing but basically them trying, to justify everything that they were doing. So, I like to always bring that point because the Constitution is still intact, right?
Yes.
One thing basically, that I like to look at is Derek Bell in critical race theory, right? And that is the permanency of racism, right? So I think that ties right into the Constitution as well, as far as the way that they viewed us from the beginning, never as citizens. And remember, they said that we would never be citizens. And I think that we need to really take that seriously. Not only that, right? We can never think that because that we have moral values and ethics, that's what they have, right? Because as I was preparing with Linda, shout out to Linda Darton for this podcast. We ran across where it was a European, a white man, right, who had basically, he grew up in the lynching era, and he had changed his views as he got older. So now he was fighting against racism and lynching and things of that nature. He said that when he was growing up, that it was taught in their homes that to kill a black person was no more than killing a dog. It was just like killing a dog,
Yeah.
right? So, and that really, really stuck to me, right? Because if you train your children and teach your children and teach and train your community that those are like beasts of the field, just like Henry Berry in 1832 at the House of Delegates in Virginia, right? He said that, you know, we are this close to making the Negroes like the beast of the field. We can't let no light enter into the mind. And this was said in response because of Nat Turner, right? Because Nat Turner had a solution for lynching, and that was to lynch them. And also, I think that we should pay attention to one of our own right here in North Carolina, Monroe, North Carolina, Robert F. Williams in the 1960s. I encourage everybody to read the book Negroes with Guns, right? Because when the Klan was trying to terrorize them, he was a former military man, Marine. He organized his community. So when they came through there with their trucks and they would shoot and they shot back, and he said that they weren't as brave as they thought they were when they was getting shot at back, right? So they stopped entering into that neighborhood trying to terrorize. Eventually, it blew up to the point where he had to take refuge, and he went to first he went to Cuba, then he ended up to Africa. But a real freedom fighter, and I think that's important. And Henry McNeil Turner also said, "Black man, get a gun," right? Because it's important that we be able to protect ourselves and protect our families from violence from those who wish to do us harm and lynch us.
Now, please.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead on Brother Essence.
A song just came across my mind about the Emmett Till. I think the person that fingered him for whistling at her or something.
Yes.
She retracted her story or something, and whatever happened in that, anything like nobody, nothing, that just got swept under the rug also.
So you're talking about Carolyn Dunham Bryant is the white female who actually said that he whistled at her and told her husband and her brother-in-law, I believe that would have been, but either way, they came to the house of Emmett's uncle. And here's the thing. Walked right in his house. Where's your nephew? Or where's your family member?
Right.
Went to his room and made him get up out the bed. So we're not talking about local law enforcement saying I need to question you downtown. This is the power they had given to white men without a badge or a swearing in. That they could walk in your house and snatch a Negro out the bed.
Right.
And punish him. When your system allows that, we are already in trouble. You don't have any protections. And I think that's the other issue is that Brother Asar said well about, you know, brothers get a gun. Well, if you notice, the first thing that they do is they dismantle us from protection.
That's right.
That's the very first thing
That's exactly right.
that they do is they dismantle African American males from having any kind of form of protection. And if you notice, if they pull you over, especially in the hood, the first thing they're going to ask you is if you have drugs
or weapons
or guns. Because they know they've created economic lynching where first they starve you out. And now you go to drugs. Well, now you have a drug, that means you have a felony. That felony means you cannot obtain a permit for a firearm.
Yes.
Which means you cannot protect yourself. And now then they bond you over practically to the feds. Now, I'm just going to roll back. Because they bond you over and tell you that now the mandatory sentence for carrying a weapon, a firearm by felon, can get you at least 9 years in the feds. Am I right, Brother Kevin?
That's right.
So just for you having a firearm alone, never swung it, never threw it, never shot it,
Right.
you're going to get 9 years off the rip. Now, in the meantime, economically, the system is taking care of all your children. The system is creating this angry, and most of the firearm by felon, the felon came from an economic issue.
Right.
Now, had they they gone ahead and paid us reparations, we probably wouldn't have that economic issue. But there it is. They starve you out, which is a. Come on, y'all. This is that's systematic. What's systematic is their warfare strategies.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not a system that we all kumbaya.
Right.
What is the only thing that's systematic is their tactics. So now you give somebody at least 10 years just for having a firearm and not being able to protect itself. The only issue that I see about that at the federal level, my brothers, is this. I'll take you to East College Park. East College Park is one of the 8 neighborhoods, black neighborhoods in the inner city, that was heisted by the city of Raleigh and the federal government under HUD funding because of crime in Blythe. Now, here is the counter to us is that in order for them to have taken it, it says that anything that they build or repaired, if they built the house with HUD funding, you could not sell it within 10 years.
Right.
You had to hold on to the property that they allowed you to have or build for at least 10 years. But on the other hand, you're sending our brothers away at the prime of their building years for 10 years. So while you're building communities and building wealth in 10 years, the houses that you build at $400,000 are now worth $1 million. You're sending our brothers to prison where they actually absolutely mean zero in prison, while you still make money off their backs under that system. That is called economic lynching.
Right. Now, wouldn't that be also when you're talking about crime and blight and gentrification? Would that fall into the category of land grab?
Absolutely, because you deplete the area with food deserts. You fill the economy with a false economy with drugs and depression and alcohol, and then you come back and you RICO it because now you rack up what you broke.
Right. Ooh.
So really, technically, our communities are victims of racketeering from the government. Like, you are not doing us any favor by building affordable housing. That's the least that you could have done. When people say, "Oh, we need affordable housing," no, we don't. We need our real value.
Right.
I don't need affordable nothing. My ancestors have been here 400 years and should have passed on enough wealth. Right. But at every generation, you find them making us start over.
Yeah.
Our neighborhoods are the only ones that can be uprooted and moved and shifted. So we don't build generational wealth because we're always being subject to removal. You can't build anything on the move. The only way you can build is if you steal.
Yeah, that's what they do. That's how they're building their generational wealth, by stealing the land grabs.
And that is why we call that economic lynching.
Economic lynching.
And in the meantime, anybody who's in the way is subject to physical lynching.
Right.
So basically, the police officers are just qualified immunity lynch brokers.
I like the way she worded that. Qualified immunity lynch brokers. Yeah. And just speaking on it, not only if they had given the reparations, if they didn't, but just giving, don't even want to use the word giving, but just gave us a chance to work for our own. We could build our own homes. You know
we built their country.
We built the country.
We built pyramids. But you know what? They would rather, it's a saying, and I don't know the saying, but it talks about like how bad charity is. They'd rather give us food stamps and medical. No, where's our brothers who are supposed to be the equation to make sure that we have medical coverage and layers of protection. But you dismantle them because white supremacy has built a system that has dismantled who they are, and you replaced us with party bags at the end of a party. We're going to give you turkeys in a bag. We're going to give you book bags in a bag.
Right.
We're going to give you... Where's the man at? You got our women in the ration line with the children.
Yeah.
But you are comfortable having all of the men lynched out of the home.
Yeah.
Well, they can't even say their name, can't even put it on the lease, can't put it on the deed, can't say who on the birth certificate. He don't even exist.
Don't even exist. And then they call them deadbeats.
And right, you know, this and you call this a system? No, that's warfare.
Yes, I like that because you're right. It's warfare, and it's always been warfare on the black man, and
Yes.
you know, basically to separate the black man and the black woman. You know, this strong, you know, spiritual foundation of our family structure, right? And I think that, you know, when we look at the mass incarceration, right, we look at the illegal lynching that they do in the courtroom.
Come on.
Right? And then we look at, you know, how, you know, the institutions play a role in setting our children up for the school to prison pipeline. You know, so, you know, our children are getting lynched, you know, at an early age, you know, cutting, because lynching is also, you know, strangulation.
That's right.
You know, cutting off the oxygen.
Yes, sir.
And if our oxygen ain't getting to our brain and our minds because of oppression and exploitation,
That's right.
you know, it's hard to be able to breathe comfortably. Just like George Floyd, the way they cut off his oxygen.
That's
You know,
right.
he said, I can't breathe. You know, and that's very symbolic in so many ways
That's
for
right.
us as a people, right?
That's
and I
right.
think that, you know, what we have to do is understand we need to stop blaming ourselves and stop blaming each other, right? Because it's so easy to do, to blame the victim, right? Because when you look at the mass incarceration, all of our brothers that's locked up, they didn't come out of their mother's womb destined for incarceration.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So it's a plan,
That's right.
right? And when we look at the lengths, you know, that this country, this government, this so-called legal system will go through to make sure that they can target, and they go by percentages. They know they ain't got to give, they just get 3% of us, which they say is 1 out of 3, which is a big percentage.
Yes.
They're going to make more money off of our incarceration as being enslaved, as the 13th Amendment allows them to do, to make them more money than they made when we were actually chattel slaves before 1865. And I think that that's something that we really need to look at, because we blame each other, and we blame ourselves and we blame each other, but we do have a responsibility, right? And we do have to be held accountable.
That's right.
But the only way we can be accountable is to attain the right knowledge and the right consciousness.
That's right.
Because if we don't have the right consciousness, we're not going to be able to deal, you know, with this devil that we're dealing with.
That's right.
Right? It takes the right mindset, the right intelligence, and also when we're dealing with consciousness, we got to understand will, because we also have to have the will to fight, challenge, and whoop this enemy. Not only for our sake, but for our sake, for our ancestors' sake, for our children's sake, and our future generations. That's how important it is for us to deal with institutional and systemic racism, Eurasian imperialism, colonization, right? We got to stamp all of this out, because if we don't stomp it out, they're going to continue to do the things that they do. The only reason they lynch us is because they had the power to lynch us.
Absolutely.
So we have to take the power out their hands, right? And it's important for us to understand that consciousness is power. And consciousness has to be organized, right? Because a lot of times what we do is we react to situations out of emotion and not with reason and intelligence, because we mad at what happened. But when we plan and organize the way we do, like we're doing here, right, and help to organize our people, to understand that when we raise our consciousness and we understand history and we study history, and we see how from the 1600s up to now, how they put laws together to destroy us,
That's right.
intimidate us, keep us in fear, oppress and exploit us, right? But yet they consider us to be citizens of this country, right? We're not treated like citizens.
Right.
So it's important for us to understand and find out what exactly is a citizen, right? So there are a lot of issues that we have to deal with as a people in order to stop the lynching.
Yeah.
That's true.
Marcus Garvey once said, "Liberate the minds of men, and you'll ultimately liberate the bodies of men."
That's true.
So
That's
what
right.
what steps can we take as African Americans, African people all together, to put protection on ourselves, politically, socially?
Well, first of all, I think it's very it is imperative that I think when you talk about knowing yourself, know thyself. When you know yourself or you know thyself, you don't want to be associated with.
Right.
Why are you working so hard to
Right.
assimilate yourself with people who hate you?
Right.
Why are you trying to build a career with those who hate you? Why are you trying to connect or make work? And that is the only reason why they're able to actually call it a system, because we bought into
We
it.
bought into it. Yeah.
That's the only reason why they can call it a system. Now, if we drop the bag and say we're no longer done, you would actually have to call it white supremacy or something that is other than what we wouldn't call it that. Because we know that if it was a system that we were connected to, we would not abuse ourselves. Who would actually be in a system where you target yourself?
I can't think of one person in their right mind.
And I
that want
think,
that.
right, absolutely. And so for us, and to recognize that one of America's greatest tools is marketing. They spend a whole lot of time and money into promotion of America as a nation. That is why, trapdoors such as the NFL, the NBA, because those are national basketball associations, national. So they make you feel a part of the National League of Footballs. When you nationalize something, you make everybody feel as if they are
Part of it. Yeah.
right. Now everybody ain't getting killed by police, but everybody on Monday Night Football forget all about the police.
Yes.
And they know that. But that's also a tactic that was used early on during the Roman Catholicism.
Right.
When they first had the Colosseum.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'll notice that the Colosseums are round or oval in the same manner that all of the arenas are today. And before, they had their seating arrangement as to who was of upper echelon and who was not. Back then, they invited, nobody was left at home. The slaves in Rome came to those events. And the reason why they allowed the slaves to come is because most of the upheavals and the overthrow of governments came from the lower base. Everybody else was happy. It was the poor that would rise up
Right.
and buck the system. But if you brought them to the event, they would still have a sense that they still belong to a part of
Right.
society.
I understand that.
And that remind me of
Come on.
Sunday NFL football games. Everybody want to feel a part of it. They want to get their jerseys and things of that nature, but that don't have nothing to do with our reality and what's going on in the world.
Absolutely.
Right? And one of the things is basically because we can sit here and we can talk about, all of our ancestors, and brothers and sisters and those who came before us, and even the recent lynchings.
Yes.
We can talk about that, right? And there, you don't hear no outcry nowhere in America, right? But then you can have one European, the one who got killed, Charlie Kirk, right? And then some kind of way, it ends up being black people's fault when it was a white man that killed him, right? And that's basically the psychology of this nation. Always blame the black man.
Yeah.
Always blame black people. If you can't do anything else, blame them, right? Because it's like they expect us to be their whipping post.
That's
right.
right.
And this is where I'm so glad, there's so many of our brothers and sisters are standing up and pushing back against the narrative, that we should be in mourning, because he was murdered by one of his own. But yet you see no mourning where they swept what happened to the young brother Javion McGee in Henderson, North Carolina under the rug, right? And that's right down the street from us. And we can't let that go and be swept up under the rug, just like the brother that got killed on Rock Choir Road at Wee Bob's, Williams. What was his name? Darrell Williams, right? You know, they try to pay the family off and things of that nature, but nobody is ever held accountable, right? And see, the message is to us. The message is to African people, the black people, right? To raise our consciousness to really understand what's going on. These people don't care nothing about us, right? We should never trust them because they're not trustworthy, right? So, you know, I think that, you know, once we understand that, you know, these lynchings have been taking place, because I don't know what they called them before 1865, but they was lynching us back then. They might have called it something else, right? You know, because to them, we were no more than an animal, no more than a dog, right? So that right there should let us know we should not be trying to assimilate, accommodate, and integrate with people who have treated us in this way and still treating us in this way, right? Psychologically, mentally, spiritually, economically, every way that you can think of, they try to oppress us. You know, Charlie Kirk, he said so many terrible things about, you know, black people, about black women, you know, about, you know, basically DEI. So things like that has to really be looked at. And what we have to do, because a lot of times, you know, we become, you know, I'm not going to say our worst enemies, but we become enemies of ourselves. And I'm talking about those who participate, you know, in the institutions, in the system, with jobs, you know, high positions, right, where they're put there to do the dirty work to their own community. And they do the dirty work, you know, for the white man, right? And it's time for us to start calling, you know, these people out, the politicians, all of them, right, and have some serious conversations, because I'm going to be honest with you. We don't have not one black child or one black person to sacrifice for white supremacy.
That's right.
Right? Or white inferiority. Anything we want to call it. Eurasian imperialism.
That's right.
You know, we think we got children to sacrifice. Many times I hear people say, well, all of us ain't going to make it. I don't want to hear that. Because they brought all of us over here. Right? And all of us are suffering. So we should try to get all of our brothers and sisters out of this situation, this system of oppression, where we have to worry about whether the police are going to pull us over and murder one of our children, right? Or murder us, you know, just because they feel like it.
That's right.
Just because
and then they try to cover it up, and the government tries to cover it up, right? So it's important, you know, for the listening audience, right, to really take these words we're saying seriously, because we cannot trust this government, and we cannot trust Europeans.
Absolutely. And let me say this, you know, you're absolutely right, Brother Asar, that when we take a look at the deeper parts of lynching, it's more about how do we dismantle what's already been done, and are we willing to do the work? Because what we find is that most people are trying to find ways to accommodate it so that they can come up in it. They can close their eyes and pretend as if everybody don't see it, that it'll go away. So that has been the approach to many of our African American brothers and sisters who have gotten into their system, is that we're going to fix the system, but we're going to pretend like you had nothing to do with the damages. So let us fix the black people. And I hear you say that quite often, is, you know, what can we do to help the black people? No, what you can do is pay me back and keep your hands off my stuff.
That's right.
There's only two things that you owe me. Keep your hands off our stuff and pay me back. Two things that they cannot stop doing is pay us back or giving us back stop touching our belongings. Because then even that comes with not just qualified immunity, but eminent domain. That's another lynching practice, is that the state or the county takes over property, runs entire highways through. That's another way of breaking up our unity. 147, Highway 147 in Durham. Hayti. They ran a major highway right through it. There has this is
what you said, Hayti?
Yes.
Durham, North Carolina.
Yeah.
Yes.
Durham, North Carolina. So anytime you start looking at major highways that go through the black community, is there a way of breaking up our political power?
Right.
Because remember, we vote collectively together, so they start separating us by just running major highways through our stuff. All of those are strategic.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, and so until we start saying, like, protect, if that's going to be the case, make sure you protect black people in a way that we don't even need to be in the same area in order to be protected. Make sure we don't need economic status to be protected, because most of the times they like to, the lynchings of old usually came from you having too much.
That's right.
The reason why they got lynched is because they came straight out of slavery, and then they start building wealth. And that's where you see the burning of Tulsa, 1921, entire
Right.
communities. They had too much. They was building too fast. They was building political base, you know, like everybody grouping together. They knew what they had to do. They had the meetings. They had the churches. All of these things. Now you have a whole community of children who don't know what church, religion, spirituality is. So the church is no longer the base for us to come together to meet. You don't have any meeting places in the community. Some of the pastors then turn into pimps versus and then they want to be so far away from us in living quarters that they can't even protect us. So they don't even know about protection.
Right.
The other issue is that, so economically we die. Economically and physically and mentally, there is nobody to hold us up spiritually in no kind of way. And then our children are just labeled. At the end, just label them, give them something. The fathers are gone, give the parents some subsidies, and then give the children medications. And those are just death cycles.
Tell me about
That's really good about the psychotropic drugs and the medicine, because remember, as Brother Essence, as you open up, right, and you talked about one of the main things that they was trying to do with the lynching is affect us psychologically, right? And I think that's important, right? And Dr. Kimberly made a great point, because when they misdiagnose our children, right?
Right.
And when they start sending them these therapists, and remember, right, they all get paid, right, once they label our children. That's when the payment starts from the insurance company.
Right.
Because they're not going to pay until they're labeled within the DSM-5, right?
That's right.
So we got to look at that lynching right there, because it's all about affecting the mind.
It's true.
Right? And we know that if they put our children on psychotropic drugs, their mind ain't going to develop in a natural way, the way it's supposed to be, right? So basically, that's also a form of control, you know, in the educational system, right? So we really got to look at these systems and these institutions, right? And like I said earlier, they put out black faces in the top positions. The superintendent of Wake County Public Schools, Robert Taylor.
Robert Taylor,
Right,
Dr.
yeah.
Robert Taylor.
And they get paid handsomely to prepare our children for the school to prison pipeline. So we as a community, right, as community advocates, activists,
That's right.
freedom fighters, right, we have to basically, you know, use our organizing skills and our ability to bring the community together and educate and protect them. Go into these schools, like Dr. Kim always talking about, you know, working with the parents, you know, if the child has IEP or whatever, so that they get the proper attention that's necessary, and the school system just don't mess them over.
Yes,
So
sir.
it take advocates, right? Because we're not developed enough as a people to have our own schools yet where we can educate our children, right? But it's important that we educate them like we do on Saturdays at KCSSU and any other time that we get a chance, you know, to work with our children and educate our children and bring the community together. But the number one thing with me, and you know, and I really start, you know, focusing on, you know, what they're doing to our children probably about 12 years ago after I, you know, first came home. And when I saw so many of the students that were coming to KCSSU was on medicine.
Come on.
And I would always be like, ain't nothing wrong with this child, ain't nothing wrong with that child. These children are more than capable of learning because they're learning what we're teaching them. And they're learning at a good pace, right? So to the parents out there, let's not be so quick to turn our children over to a system that's looking to destroy their mind.
That's true.
And let me state, I'm sorry, let me state this fact real quick. We're only with the children for 2-3 hours at the most on one day a week, and you can see the progress. You can see them learning. You can see them even being attentive and want to learn this stuff. And then the other system, the school system, has them 5 days a week for 9 hour days. And I'm sorry, Dr. Kim,
Well,
I cut you off.
You
Go
are
for it.
absolutely. Well, I want to also reiterate for brother. We did. As soon as we came out of slavery, we immediately started building our own institutions. Church was first. Our religious and spiritual foundation was built first. And mind you, that was the only institution that blacks were allowed to build. Remember, and I won't say allowed to build, but before slavery, that was the only thing they allowed blacks to actually be able to congregate. Remember, we could not even congregate together because they feared that we were conspiring to either overthrow or run away. So there was a rule that two slaves could not be found talking together.
Wow.
Now, what they did is they they brought in black slaves that they allowed to be preachers.
Right.
And that is where you saw Nat Turner. And Nat Turner started looking for scriptures because they would not only make them preachers, but they would also give them the scriptures that they were allowed to preach.
Right.
They could only tell their people to be subservient to your master because this is what the Bible said. But Nat started looking in the Bible for other liberation scriptures. And that is how he got converted to a place where he knew this was not what was intended for the black population.
That's exactly right.
So the first thing that we did is we crossed over into a form of, we took that same principle of spirituality and freedom, and that is one of the things we built. Most of our schools and our churches were one and the same.
Yes, ma'am.
So we built immediately our institutions. What the problem was is they burnt them down.
Yeah.
And if they were not burning them down, they were forcing us to pay taxes on material that they would not allow other people to have. So, mind you, anything that we've built, they've come after. And we've had to rely on their protections to protect our stuff. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
I got a question, right? Because
yes, sir.
I love that what you just said about, the churches. And when you said it, I said to myself, wow, it's over 600 African American churches in Raleigh.
It's true.
Alone. Those are a lot of institutions.
Right.
Right. And then when you say how it was used as one building, and that make me a shout out to Reverend Robinson St. Matthew AME Church, right? Because we've been working with them since 2016, 9 years. And they let us utilize, their space for after school programs, summer camp, special events. They basically just open up anytime we've called, and it's an AME church. Right. We've called St. Matthew AME Church, Reverend Robinson, his congregation, very supportive. And I think that, because you make a good point about the institutions, I just feel like we have to do something, to work with, these institutions and talk to them about being more involved. But we spoke on, prosperity preaching and all that. So there are a lot of obstacles and, challenges. But I feel like that we have to put forth the effort, right, to get someone. Now, I know all 600 ain't going to get involved. But whoever we can get involved, right, to help our babies, with literacy, with math, with, basically understanding character development, developing the mind, things that are really going to help with the overall development of our children. If we can get, some of these churches who believe in truth, justice, and righteousness to assist, that we can really help to, protect our babies and counter the school to prison pipeline.
And let me say this as well, brother. Sorry, because you're on a role when you say to go back and bring them forward. Let us also be reminded that in the 80s and the 90s, they picked up where they left off. Because now most of the churches that have become of influence start bringing daycare centers into their.
Yes.
They start that became trendy
Right.
for Word of God, Upper Room,
That's right.
First Cosmopolitan. We could go on with and then white institutions, First Baptist downtown, Eden the Street. It was almost a given that if you had a church that could hold a capacity, your next move was to bring in a daycare. Now the Catholics moved a little further, and they started doing orphanages and homeless shelters. That's what we began to see across the globe. Now, black people didn't do homeless shelters; they didn't want to be dealing with no homeless population. But the children were innocent, and it was money for the picking because the government would pay for daycare. The government would pay subsidies, so it worked very well for another form of income to the black communities. But we initially started out with church and state together.
Right.
We did church, and we also did learning, and that was one and the same. But when you start burning down our institutions, and then you start saying that we're not going to give you transportation, because my mother and them would talk about how white kids were able to ride the bus, but they were not. They had to walk for many miles.
That's right.
So we paid taxes, but we didn't get the same service. So they felt that if they integrated, they would get the same services that the white.
Right.
That's where integration came from.
Right.
Forced integration says you're gonna have to treat me the same way, but it didn't make them treat us any different. We was with them, but we were not treated any different.
Yeah. And the AME church, shout out to them. They do just as small as just using their parking lot.
Yes,
you know. And so one thing about the back then when the churches when it was together, it was used for support, protection, for help. But they burned them down, and once they got put back up, built back up, now is funded. The funding is channeled through it differently, and so that changes the curriculum. It changes what they teach to the masses now, and it just changes how they look at the community altogether. I've met a couple of pastors that told me that I'm not getting involved with anything unless it involves my congregation. I mean, that's for another whole subject there. But what's the difference in allowed and lawful as it pertains to this conversation?
Well, I think when we talk about lynchings and we talk about allowed versus lawful, before it was allowed, lynchings were allowed. You didn't need a law to say you would be lynched, and whomever lynched you was immune from punishment. Today, they could have an anti-lynching law, but still lawfully lynch you. Qualified immunity allows them to lynch you.
Yes.
So even though they can have anti-lynching laws, they can also have qualified immunity laws that will allow you to be lynched under that law. So one, you don't even need a law. There was no law that said you could lynch people, but obviously it was allowed.
Yeah.
It was allowed.
Yeah. Right.
You could stand there and lynch a person and don't leave. The sheriff could come out, and you don't even have to walk away.
Yeah. Right.
That's allowed lynching.
That's allowed lynching.
Right.
I walked in a restaurant. It was in the mountain area of Virginia. Cracker Barrel was the restaurant. I put it out. Cracker Barrel, the restaurant. But me and a few of my brothers of mine, some friends of ours, we in there, we eating and everything. We looking around the walls. You know how the Cracker Barrel got a lot of antiques around there. But they got the actual tickets. And at this particular Cracker Barrel, they had the actual tickets that was handed out or sold. I don't know if they were selling them at that time or just giving them away, but to come to some lynchings.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and they still got them hanging on their walls there, and be honest, this was probably in 2009 when I seen it, and I haven't eaten at a Cracker Barrel since. And I'm a breakfast type of guy. But I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. Kim. I cut your wisdom again.
Oh no, that
Yeah.
was. Listen, nothing spells better than lived experience. I can tell you.
Yeah.
Right. I think another thing basically, that we need to mention, right, is that the crowds that will gather, right, to see someone lynch. Sometimes it would get up to 20,000, like a sporting event.
What a spectacle.
So I think that, that's something for us to really, look at as well. The fact that, and you made a great observation as far as the Coliseums, and how they would fight way back. It's the same with football. It's the same process.
Yes.
Out there, trying to kill each other.
It's true.
A bloodthirsty sport.
Right.
And what sport was more bloodthirsty than hanging a black man or black woman or a black child, for white people.
It's certainly a sport. It's
Yes,
it's always, I think, pursuing us as we ran off the plantation was a sport. Gunning us down is a sport. Lynching us is a sport. It is a sport. Like, you're not protecting and serving. You found a career that you can hide your hate. And I tell all the time, people, the only thing prior to the lynchings, before they were in front of the courthouse, now they're lynched behind the walls of the courthouse. And I call them lynched by the bench. Right.
Bench, yeah.
Yes. And so, and then at every garner, there is a deal breaker. So the slave patrollers are no longer using horses. Now they're using horse-powered engines to chase us down. How fast can they lynch us rawhide? Derek Chauvin, his picture for me was always epic when I saw his knee on this person's neck, on George Floyd's neck. Why? Because it reminded me of what it looked like when they would take down a lion,
Right.
and put their stand on as if this is prey.
Indeed. Right.
So, lynchings are predatory.
Yes.
You don't have to have done anything. This is not about what you did wrong. This is about the predator, not the prey. So when you're in a profession that allows you to be predatory in nature, then we don't have a police force. We have a lynching force. We have a lynch mob.
Right.
And what they have to do to make it work is they have to get other African Americans. They have to get all cultures to come and join and be included.
Participate.
They have to participate in order so they don't look as brute.
Right.
Like they would look like if we just drop the bag and look at how controversial it is now. When we don't have anything to say or we don't engage in their behaviors, they get mad.
Right.
They need us to participate so they can look human. I remember the pattern that, psychologically, I remember how many lynchings we would have in our black community in Southeast Raleigh. And immediately after, they were trained to say things like, well, Dr. Kim, can you, they would like to have a meeting and bring you to the table. I was thinking, are you talking about after the lynching or before the lynching? Why is it after the lynching?
Right.
We're always, well, we need you all to talk about ways that we can de-escalate. No, you need to talk to white people on how to not hate, not to de-escalate. Because what we're finding is that black people black police officers never hang white people. That's one. And black people don't even hang other black people on the force. So who we're talking about is how do you train white men to behave? Do you have a training called Train White Males to Behave? And call me when you want to have that discussion.
Yeah.
That right there. And that would tick them off. Because I would just go to the root. I'm not going to play with you with another de-escalation tactic. Use the same de-escalation tactic that you use on white people where you never shoot them or kill them.
Right.
It could be the same drugs. It can be the same type guns. It's nothing different from the drugs and the guns that the black men have that they would have for the white men. So whatever self-control that white men are using with white folks, use it on blacks.
Right. And just a comparison, like the kid in Headingham that shot officers and as well as citizens. I think he's still living to this day, right? And then you talk, and then the brother that was in front of Weebobs that you was talking about, who was probably only sitting in his car or something, and trying not to get killed, got killed anyway. Yeah, it's terrible.
Absolutely. And so even when the city of Raleigh, and we'll go back to the part of lynching, because lynching is also to preserve white supremacy. So when the city of Raleigh, when that Headingham shooting happened, immediately the city started providing resources. They put it on their website. Anybody who was affected by this, the community, we have, if you got mental health issues and blah, 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 behind it, any kind of backlash, that kind of thing. And so, again, when white supremacy is in the wrong, they immediately make reparations or repair. They immediately start providing resources to repair their people. This is not about who got killed. This is about covering the act. 5 people were murdered. But that year, 30 people died in the city of Raleigh, predominantly black people. Let me say this. They had a year later, they had a whole Raleigh Hills event, downtown Raleigh, for those people. And never once did they ask any of the other 25 victims of violence or gun violence if they needed any kind of mental health resources or anything. So again, this is all about preserving even the image. They took the focus off of the little boy, if you'll notice, and his heinous behavior. Nobody talked about the heinous behavior of this child. We were not allowed to.
Right. You're talking about Headingham, right?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Right.
If you'll notice, that's why the issue of this young man, Charlie Kirk, is you are not allowed to talk about how heinous his words were, how provocative or provoking, invoking were his words that would have started a riot at any minute. Because remember now, if you believe like a Christian, the Bible, or quote unquote, the guide that they use is life and death is in the power of the tongue.
That's right.
Am I right, brother?
That's right.
Life and death is in the power of the tongue. That's what your Bible says. This man out here spewing hate. So life and death is in the power of the tongue. I don't know how you can back away from what happened. Because whatever you say, it has a cause and effect.
Yes.
And again, America really does not want to take responsibility. And when that happens, they also tell you that you're not worthy to hold them responsible.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. And Charlie Kirk, all he was known for was just his racial remarks and those
Inciting a
type
riot.
of things, inciting riots and all.
Inciting a riot, inciting hate, and those, that's real. I can't tell you, I don't believe that murder should be the response to what a person says. But at the end of the day, without us even having a Charlie Kirk incident, we have to remember that this entire country was founded on violence. Was it not violence? So why is it so different now?
Right.
And so today we are supposed to mourn somebody who died behind violence. we mourn somebody about violence every day and every month. We memorialize all of the murders that they have called soldiers. So violence in this country is very normal.
Right. Right. Definitely. And I know we spoke on violence of this country numerous of times already, but so do you believe mental, psychological, or spiritual lynching is that like is that a different or do you, because it's harder to see those type of lynchings, do you think those are more significant or is it
Absolutely.
all the same?
It all has an effect in some kind of way. I think it's more damaging when you can't detect or when you psychologically cannot identify what's happening. I think that's what's happening to a lot of our young people. And certainly, when our young people are behaving in manners that is abnormal, the trend is so abnormal, they don't know where it's coming from. But it's because they've been involved in a lynching over and over and over. And nobody has said, excuse me, that's not you. This was given to you. This was given to your community. This poison was put in your food. This poison was put into the education system.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so when you can't detect, it's almost like carbon monoxide. You're dying but don't know it. And that is how America operates. And it is better operating when you see other black people operating with it. See, if we see another black person smiling and giggling,
Right.
we don't think this food is poison.
Right.
We think, well, maybe we need to go try it out. Or then they start using words like, you all need a seat at the table. And we really should be fasting. We should be stepping away from America's stuff.
Right.
And that's what we are today. We almost asking them to give us the lynching rope. Look at the words that they use. The young people use trap. Trap house.
Definitely.
We're using words that unlife us.
Right.
We're using words that devalue us. We are almost welcoming the lynching. Then we start singing about how, 5-0 was looking for me and they ran me down and put the knee on my neck. And, like it's almost a war story as like a lynch story.
Right.
And then they don't want to just be lynched by any government. They want to be lynched by the feds. Nobody ever even rap about the state.
Nah.
Then nobody said the state came and got me. They be like, the feds is watching.
Yeah. Be fresh when the feds watching.
But, yeah, you somebody. You somebody.
Are you saying that sometimes, well, not so much you're saying, but this is a thought that came to my mind, that we kind of lynch ourselves with our own thoughts and actions?
Brother, they have set it up so well that they will pay us to lynch ourselves. They will pay us to sing a song about lynching. And give us the rope to do it, the gun, the rope, and the performance, and let them come right to the city of Raleigh and perform and call it Dreamville.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that whole, we spoke on it.
Right.
We spoke on the music industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, which basically play a major role in the prison industrial complex. Right, it's a direct connection. Going all the way back to the late 80s and early 90s, with the gangster rap when that first started coming. So, when we do lynch ourselves, with lyrics, with thoughts, with actions,
Right.
because we don't know no better. Our consciousness isn't raised to the point where it need to be.
That's right.
And I think that, that's one of the things that I always like to speak on is the knowledge of self, right? Because the knowledge you have is going to be based off of the information that you receive.
That's right.
So if we're receiving information on a low-level basis, we're going to have a low-level consciousness, right? Unfortunately, they pay us for having a low-level consciousness.
Yeah.
And not having a high-level consciousness.
Wait a minute, brother, and they pay you they pay us top dollar.
Yeah.
Right.
we top shelf ignorant, okay?
Right.
We are top shelf ignorant. And so, and in order for, and that's how capitalism, imperialism,
Right.
all of these systems of white supremacy work is because they starve you out, and they will give you a mechanism to get to the top
Yeah.
and kill yourself.
Right.
And matter of fact, you get to the top and your own brother will kill you. They won't kill you.
Right.
Your own brother will kill you. And then in order for you to stay relevant, you got to keep repeating the hate for yourself. Yeah. You got to, like, mumble.
I think another way of lynching, since we're talking about music,
Yes,
right,
sir.
is what you basically speak on often, and that's the drill music.
Oh,
Can you kind of explain what the drill music is?
Brother Kevin.
Because that's a form of lynching, isn't it?
But listen.
Well,
If you roll up on what you consider to be your enemies and gun them down.
Well, they've created a survival zone of life for us. They've created survival. Mm-hmm. So because reality, when you don't give people repair or reparations, one of the reparations that they have to give us is the ability to connect with each other. When you repair, this is not just about money and finance.
Right.
This is about, because remember when they burnt us down, we were not. What they were also saying is you better not ever build together, and enforce indoctrination and enforce integration. Also says that in order for you to survive, you must come into our building. You cannot be safe in your own building. That is why the Birmingham, those bombs, they were saying the only way you can be safe is if you're amongst us. You cannot be safe in a building with all black people.
Right.
You talking about the church bombings in Birmingham?
That is correct.
Alabama.
So we were forced to integrate just for safety, if nothing else. Because they didn't burn down their churches.
Yeah.
So we felt more safer if we had to be with them.
That's a deep point.
That's a fair
Yeah. That's a deep point,
Right.
because we was thriving. You said about the Tulsa a couple of times. What was that? Black Wall Street also.
Right.
They say Durham, North Carolina was such a prominent black city that was growing and expanding. And you just spoke on what was it called? Haytime. Yeah, how they ran the highway right through to separate it. That could separate the votes and all. That's a deep point right there.
Those are war tactics that we've never actually called war. Mm-hmm. Those lines, those gentrification lines, those gerrymandering lines, those are war lines. Those are how strategies are made.
Yeah.
So again, but they won't allow us to call it war because we've joined with them.
Mm-hmm.
See, now, when we go, Brother Asar had asked about, the drill music. The drill music only comes from them placing us in survival. Mm-hmm. So now all we have to fight is each other. And in order, the same patterns of practice still remain. Is that a man has to have respect, value, and some form to make money. Mm-hmm. And if in our culture, making a rap music gets us out of the hood, but in order for you to rap, you have to have something that people want to hear. Well, the struggle is what our young people want to hear. So the only way I can talk about the struggle is to keep the fight, a struggle going on. And the struggle has been reduced amongst each other. Mm-hmm. So the drill music is nothing but them repeating their fight against one another. Mm-hmm. Territory, money, drugs, stuff that they don't own. They don't own the they don't own the neighborhood. The drugs belongs to who gave it to them. Mm-hmm. And who made it legal or illegal. And the money they seize anyway. So they seize everything at the end. They let you play the game as if you are really in control. And then when it's time, they just shut it all down and bring everybody in.
Yeah. And they the lyrics and the music stay one of their tactics. But they're using a lot of different the content they pushing through a lot of different podcasts nowadays. They giving people money to push that bad content. Mm-hmm. Even movies. Giving a lot of money to people pushing these bad movie contents also.
Well, and I think you remember the movie Hollywood that was put out when they start talking about uh, the communities, the black community being targeted only to play certain roles. Pimps, players,
Right,
that's the
that's right.
70s.
70, Superfly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Foxy
What was
Brown.
it?
Black exploitation, black something like
That's
that.
it.
I can't
That's
get
right.
it right,
Black
but
exploitation.
yeah.
Black
Yeah.
exploitation. Right. The Mac. Monkey Hustle.
You talk about classes now.
Yeah, but I think that's important
Look,
that you will bring that up,
Oh
brother.
yeah, absolutely. That's powerful.
It's really important because even when we go back to the late '80s in Colors, right, which was about the gangs,
Right.
We didn't really know anything, heard nothing about the gangs. This was like '89,
Yeah.
right. But then once that movie came out, it exploded all over the United States.
Right.
Colors. The music, Ice-T, everything.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right, and everybody thought it was cute to have a flag or whatever,
Yeah.
but we didn't know how people didn't know how deadly it was and how dangerous
Yeah.
it was, and how it was going to tear up our communities the same way the crack epidemic
Yeah.
tore up our communities, and then they kind of joined forces, right? So I think that what we have to do is counter the negativity, with positivity, right? And when we talk about the arts, right? Because is these movies really penetrate the minds of our young and people, and we
Yeah.
think that. So just like Tyler Perry, the image that he puts out of black women, of black men, is terrible. And a lot of people don't want to speak the truth about
Yeah.
what's going on because they think it's cute, but it's not cute when we're out here getting our heads bashed in, but yet we want to laugh at this foolishness instead of using the talents, right, to promote, the moral values that we have as a people, our character,
Right.
to inspire our youth in our communities with good art, just like with music. We never had music like that back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, until the game. Everything was about the upliftment. Everything was about loving one another. Al Green, Marvin Gaye, so many different groups, right? And that's what we have to get back as a people. A couple of weeks ago, brother, like when we had a class with the children, right? And we taught the children good speech,
Yeah.
right? How important it is for us to speak to each other, with manners and with respect and with honor. Now, if we look at the music that's being put out there, everything is to attack a black man's manhood,
Yeah.
his character, calling the N-word, and
Yeah.
it's even worse for our queens.
Yeah.
The way our queens disrespect
You
each
better
other.
say that.
And then the way the brothers disrespect the queens. We got to get away from that, right? And when we get away from that is when we raise our level of consciousness and understand that we're not each other's enemy.
Let me say this as well, Brother Kevin, because that is exactly how we are supposed to conduct ourselves at the bottom. But one of the things we have to do is be very honest about the operations at the top.
Right.
And what I mean by that is my favorite trial of the century is called the Nuremberg trial. The Nuremberg trial is the trial that America and its allies held against Germany and Hitler and the Nazis during the Jewish Holocaust. It is my favorite because for the first time in history that I saw, Nuremberg, the Nuremberg trial basically held not only Germany accountable for the atrocities of the Jewish population, but it also held every last entity accountable. And what do I mean by that? They held the banks accountable for sabotaging the Jewish community. Everything, every entity, and every department, they held the minister of media and propaganda.
That's right.
Because
That's right.
they tried everybody. It says all of you all had a hand in the Holocaust or the genocide of the Jewish people. Why? Because the banks land grab. Soon as they moved the Jewish people out of their homes and put them in the ghetto, land grab. Soon as they So the banks foreclosed on those Jewish homes. The school system would not let the children come in. That was Jim Crow. They paid scientists. They incentivized scientists to make, I want to say Krylon, but it was the agent of the gas of which they paid scientists to do this. Mm-hmm. So they indicted the entire country on crimes against humanity. The very thing that we are under right now as African Americans. Yeah. And so what I believe should happen is that America should be held on war crimes. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it attacks its citizens and has since we got here. If the first, it should be crimes against humanity, and then crimes against its own citizens. Yeah. Because anytime that you say the things, and do we have enough evidence out there? Yes, we do. But guess what? Again, the lynchings did not take place because somebody just came up with the idea to lynch. In order to lynch, you must know that you are allowed. Yeah. And right. You are allowed because the systems in place protect you to do so.
Can I speak yeah. Right quick, brother? Because, I think that, mutilation, like, is one of the forms of lynching. And that automatically took me straight, to the Congo in the motherland, Africa.
That's right.
And what Belgium and Leopold did as far as, murdering over, 20 million and mutilating and cutting off arms, legs. And see, this lynching has a global aspect to it.
It sure does.
Right. Wherever we are. Right. Yeah. So we can't just basically limit it to here.
That's right.
In the United States in our experience because, it's a global experience for African people. And I think that's why, when we talk about African unification on a global basis, that's how we protect ourselves. See, when Africa gains the power that it's going to gain, that we need to gain, right, and we're going to be discussing some of that next week on our show, it's going to basically empower all black people wherever we are on the planet.
That's right.
Right? Because it's just like when you think about China, you don't have a lot of things happening to Chinese here, right, because they got a back in China. They got a support system. Europe got a support system, even though a bunch of Europeans stay here, they still got what? The EU, European Union. Right. They rock hand in hand. Great Britain and the United States, right? That's right. And so Africa, that's why when we understand how everybody is running to Africa to, take what they can take and try to act like they African friends because they got something going on now where the United States and the European Union talking about investing over $600 billion for infrastructure in Africa. So, they're not just doing that because they're the friends of Africans.
Right, but they won't give us a dime.
Or African countries.
Right.
So I think that, we need to understand that this lynching thing is global.
That's right.
Yeah. Right? And not only is it global, but also is to keep us psychologically, have a psychological defect in the way that we think, in the way that we act, and thinking that we can overcome the white man. Because, see, that's the one thing that they want us to do. They don't want us to know in our mind, in our spirit, that they can be defeated. Because one of their myths is that they can't be defeated. That's why they come up with Superman, right, and things and Captain America to try to make it seem like the white man is the almighty man. But we know that that's not true. We see it every Sunday during the NFL football game.
Brother Kevin then brought NFL in. Oh, wow.
But let me say real quick, because it is important to know that it's going on across the globe.
That's true.
And that so we all need to be connected and try to figure out how to unify to combat this. But also you mentioned what happened, the Jewish the Holocaust situation.
Sure.
Now I don't speak German, but I've with this new AI, I guess they said they doing the thing over where they saying what Hitler's speeches.
Yes.
Where they translating it.
Okay.
So, and I ain't praising Hitler or nothing either, but from what I can hear from Hitler's speeches, he was only protecting his land from them coming over there to colonize his land and killing his babies and stuff. Something that we need to be standing up for ourselves the same type of way. And that's what I want to say about that. But as a people, could we unite around an urgent strategy to this modern day lynching? Community defense, cultural, through policy. What you think a strategy could be that could be helpful, right? For us to this
Can
day.
I speak to that right quick?
Please, brother.
Yeah,
Kevin.
yes. For one, and I'm really serious when I say this, we had to raise African warriors. We had to raise our black men and women too, because the sisters will fight too, just like the men.
Oh, yeah.
Right, to stand up
Thank
for
you.
ourselves and don't put up with the injustice. You look what Robert Williams did way back in the early 1960s, 60 something years ago. Right, you look at what Nat Turner did. You look at what so many of our others did in resisting. Right, because it's a political fight, it's an economic fight, it's a spiritual fight, it's a cultural fight. It's a fight. It's a battle on all fronts, right? But it's always going to come down to bloodshed, right? Before progress is really made. That's the only thing some people respect is bloodshed. And we cannot be, in this, I want to make this point, right? Because it made all the sense in the world. Because, a lot of times we talk about we'll die for our family. We'll die for our people. Right, but the brother said that, when you ask the white man what would they do for their family, they say they'll kill for their family. And see, we have to be willing not only to die, but kill. Right? Because they're trying to kill us. Right? So it's important not to always have to play defense. It's important to play offense. You play offense through strategizing. You strategize on what we can do as a people to strengthen ourselves. Right? Right? We're not the ones who have the mental health illnesses and diseases as being racist. That's them, right? And we can't fix them. They got to fix themselves. But I don't think that they're interested in fixing themselves, right? So what we have to do is, like Robert Williams did, organize on a community basis, right? But we have to organize locally, nationally, internationally, globally, right? We have to be able to build fences and men with our brothers and sisters throughout the country, throughout the diaspora, and on the continent. And it can be done. You read Proposition 46, where J. Edgar Hoover, right? And then, was it J. Edgar Hoover?
Kissinger.
He sent the message to the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and the CIA, where they plan and organize to keep us disunited, brothers and sisters on the motherland, and brothers and sisters here in the United States who was fighting for freedom, justice, and equality. Freedom fighters, right? So I think that in order for us to counter and protect ourselves, first and foremost, we have to raise our consciousness and understanding what we are defending and what we are fighting for, and that this fight has been going on a long time, and that we got to keep the fight going until we get the liberation and power that we deserve as a people.
Cool. You want to add on? Not necessarily.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, for me, being an educator, I'm not one that you can count on the kill. but
we got your back.
Thank you.
Definitely.
But I will say that my job is to kill the lie.
That's right.
To kill the lie. And I think that is more powerful than anything. They've always been intimidated by the truth.
That's right.
That is how all of our yes, they've always been intimidated by truth. That is how most of our prophets and our speakers died, because they spoke the truth. And if they were intimidated by the truth, then of course they came after us. And I think it's important for us to continue speaking truth to power, and then packaging that truth. Because the truth of the matter is, there's only one pattern for mankind, and we are the origins. Right. When brother says, I love when he opens up and he says, I am the original man.
Right.
You don't have. That's the problem. The problem is the inferiority to the original man.
That's right.
And that is why they fight so hard to dismantle anything that would accompany that origin. And so we have to say we're not a threat. Being original doesn't make us more better than you. It doesn't make us want to rule you. We don't want to keep your children in servitude. We don't want to lynch you at no party. You know, that's to the creation of your fears.
Right.
That's what has been birthed out of your inferiority, that you have to torture everybody. You have developed your own mental illness because you're intimidated by something that we had nothing to do with. Us coming to the earth in this brown skin, we did not put in an order for it. We didn't put in our own order. So you are intimidated by science.
Right.
And so so really that's all they do. The rest of what they do is always combating science. If you'll notice, the worst experiments, the experiments on humans, the experiments on is all attributed to some mental illness. They say mad scientists, but they are the mad scientists.
Right.
They mix the potions. We never know what is going to be put out here that came from them leaking something out into the air, anthrax. You know, these
That's
things
right.
these things are made in a lab.
Right.
And so then after they create them, they have to disperse them, test them on people, and then control the masses. All of these things are from inferiority, power, and control. And we never wanted to have anything to do with that with brown flesh. That is not our... Now, I will tell you, innately, we do have some skills that you can't touch. You know, you might have to practice dancing a little bit longer because, you know, our children come out like, you know, with the rhythm in them.
Right.
They don't have to hear the sound from outside because they make the rhythm inside.
Yes.
And it's just certain qualities that come with melanin that, you know, we don't always talk
That's
about.
the key thing, what you just said, melanin.
Right. It's
Yeah.
science.
Yes.
We got to go back to science because I can't convince you to like me because there is no way really that I can talk you into respecting me. This is all scientific. You can get as many guns. You can get as many laws as you want. You can put on sheets, robes. You can put all of what you want to put on with the laws that protect you, and you still will not be able to beat science. And that's all we stand upon. It's the science. And the science is not just us being melanated, it's what comes with the melanin.
Indeed.
Right.
So,
And I think, you
Go
know,
ahead.
that's very important, what comes with the melanin, right? And I think with that being said, like she said, how what we have within us innately, as far as the way we move, the way we dance, you know, our senses, right? But, you know, what we do have to be fair to us, black people, African people, all over the world. Because what was done to us, right, hasn't been done to anyone else.
oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
we have so much more to remember. That's why I'm always encouraging, you know, brothers and sisters to study so that we can regain who we are as a people, our history, the knowledge of self. We're the only people who have to go around talking about we need to know who we are because no other people has had it taken away from them
Right.
That's
the way
true.
it was taken
Right.
away from
It's
us.
true.
But like the sister said, innately, there's a genetic memory code within us that
That's
we
right.
have to tap into and ignite.
That's
right?
right.
And that's the knowledge of self.
Right.
And then that's when we travel back and understand our history, understand who we are, and what we have to do today moving forward. So I think that, you know, to be fair, because we always blaming ourselves, saying we need to be accountable, you know, and it's blaming the victim, but we still do have a responsibility and have to be accountable because we have free will.
Right.
We have free will to get on the path of righteousness, to get on the path of truth, or we have free will to practice isfit,
Right.
which is anger, jealousy, hatred, and basically ignorance.
Right.
Right. And one thing that we need to understand is that the mind is trained through knowledge, right? But the mind is also trained through ignorance, right? And ignorance is not only the absence of knowledge, but it's a force.
That's right.
And it's important for us to understand it's a negative force, you know. And you know, sometimes we can be to the point where we'll double down on our ignorance if it's something that we don't know.
That's true.
And I think that denying who we are is one of the main things basically that hinders us as a people, right? Because if you get a person from China and ask them what they are, they're going to just say Chinese without a doubt.
Right.
If you ask a European or somebody, they're going to say they're Italian, whatever. But if you ask a black person, a lot of times, the only time they'll use that word African if they put American behind it.
Yes.
Right? And to put American behind African, to me, don't make no sense. Right? Because what is an American?
Right.
If we're in America, is this how you treat your
citizens.
citizens?
Right.
This is something that we really have to take a look at
That's
as a
right.
people and open our eyes and raise our level of consciousness so that we can deal, with these white people the way we need to deal with them.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's why I said, when it comes to science and traveling back to the origins of who we are, we really don't have to argue anything beyond that because everything done to us was under a theft policy. You can't call yourself a country and you stole everything. Right. It was stolen then, it's stolen now. So, whether you put up statues to remember what you did or you put them down, like it was stolen then, it's stolen now.
Yeah.
It's stolen property. And the people that you stole it from no longer exist. They're somewhere in scattered numbers. But, again, you glorify that. We look at when we talk about even the assassinations and the lynchings. Donald Trump decided he would rather talk about, or even just in value. Watch this, just in value. He released, I want to say, the rapper NBA, the young black boy who has I don't know how many children, what have you, and it's just. All of his songs, bless his heart,
Demonic.
Right. And so, and if you had to pick and choose who would you release from the clutches of the system, they would rather have Assata Shakur, the political prisoner, locked up for standing her ground or being pro-human versus somebody who's going to come out here and continue to recite lyrics that continue a culture of irresponsibility.
Yes.
Basically setting them up for the system to, you may let NBA go, but you can go back and collect all the little NBA proteges and those that he appealed to, because he's going to do nothing but continue to spew the hate in our community that creates the lynchings.
Right, indeed.
Look at how, and so that is why I even mentioned that the issue at Nuremberg in Germany, because they held the radio stations accountable. Like here, the FCC would have been tried.
It'd be tried. Okay, I understand.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because every so often, I believe every Sunday or something, Hitler demanded that his people came together and ate.
Yeah. See.
He fed the entire. He made them come together, which is a nationalistic move. It is what a dictator does, and that is what you see with our president trying to unify. How they come together and then attack certain ones. And that is what you needed in order to have the buy-in of not just your soldiers, but the entire country. And that is how they judge the success rate of their country when it comes to fascism.
Yeah.
How well are we holding? So they would announce it on the radio. They will put it on posters. And that is how we have to look at what's going on in this country. When, what's his name? Colin Kaepernick took a knee. He said, get that son of a bee off the field. NFL. It's a National Football League. They're saying this belongs to the nation. This ain't just a franchise of...
Right.
This is how we use tactics to keep our people under control.
Yeah. And Dr. Kim, I know you said you ain't gonna do the kill part, but your skill set, your composure, give you the ability to relate with all personalities.
It does.
So your skill set is needed somewhere else. But I do got a bone to pick real quick because I know I'm new to this community. But I'm very grateful and I'm happy about it. But the Raleigh Pat, I think just last week on the show, when heard the word, if I heard it before, it went over my head. But PAT, is that for Raleigh Policing Accountability Community Task Force? I
Yes.
think I heard you say, right?
Yes.
So could you give us a little bit on that? Um, yes.
Absolutely. So we came together, back 2014, I think more towards when Mike Brown was killed and Ferguson was happening. And, we started seeing these patterns across the nation. And, a company called, and I won't say their names, but they came out and they started casing the ground and looking for the communities of color that were probably subject to the same dispositions from the police. And of course, my organization was Save Our Sons, so they wanted to know if we would be willing to come together as a collective, people, organizations, pastors, whomever, to start addressing these issues. And that is what we do. Is we come together and we address systematic issues, and I hate the word system, but white inferiority in our communities. And so right now, what we're doing is we're actually challenging. What is it that you're protecting? What is it that the Raleigh police are actually protecting? Whose property are they protecting, and whose interests are they protecting? And what I'm finding is that our police departments are being put up as fronts, or they're actually being hired as bounty hunters to basically strip black communities. And keep, and as long as you're not repairing the black community that you're broke, you're RICOing, you're racketeering. And so our question is, did they hire you to keep the racketeering of black communities, or keep us under control while white communities flourish or take over our neighborhoods? Because that's the beginning. Developers and police. So if we don't like how things are done, we call the police in, and then we just start developing in black communities. So we force out, and then we build up.
Land grab.
Land grab.
Yeah.
Right, while you lynch the ones that are in the... And, for some, lynching is not always just dying.
Nah.
Lynching may mean just the removal of an entire community.
And I hate when it got to end. I think we moving on into our last, actually a few seconds over, but it's always a pleasure for me, man. And like I said, I'm learning something every time I'm here. And with the Raleigh Pat, I need a I got to get the info. I got to be at least more active around that.
Sure.
That's my bone. I had to pit with you because I'm mad that I didn't hear about it before. But anyway, family, lynchings isn't just a rope or a noose around the neck. It's also around the culture, our minds, our spirit. But remember, a noose can be cut.
Yes.
And the way we cut it is with knowledge of self and with some unity.
Yes.
As Asada Shakur said, nobody in history has ever gotten their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of their oppressor.
That's right.
So
That's right.
we will not remain neglected. We will not remain lynched. We will rise by knowing ourselves, loving ourselves, and protecting ourselves. This is Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio, where black consciousness is not just talked about, it's lived. Remember, proper education always corrects error. Peace.
Peace.
Peace. Peace and more peace.
93.5 is a low-power FM service brought to you by Triangle Access Broadcasting, a non-profit corporation, WRLY-LP, Raleigh.
What's up, you guys? It's your host, Jo Marie, and you are on time for Girl Talk Radio. Let's get into it.
Your discretion is advised. I mean, what the f I say? What's worse, to have a father who abandoned his own, or a grandmother that has no fucking backbone? Yelling at guy, you see the lies he yet he lives on, like he beat this woman close to death. Strike him. See, you're that wrong. I've been too quiet for too long. It's time to get grown.